Hello and welcome to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efraín Martinez. I am a principal in search of wisdom, and I have found productivity to be a great tool for success. Today, I have the great and distinguished honor of having with me Dr. Marie Moreno, who is the founding principal of Las Americas Newcomer School in Houston, Texas. She is an international and nationally recognized expert with over 30 years of experience in education. She assists administrators, teachers, and directors in enhancing their support for immigrant and refugee students. Her focus includes examining school-wide systems, accountability, leadership training, language acquisition, and the social emotional aspects of learning for immigrant students. Dr. Moreno has traveled the world, visiting refugee camps in Uganda, schools in Kenya and Israel, and various countries in Central America, Cuba, and Tanzania to understand the challenges faced by newly arrived students. She earned her Doctorate of Education at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas. Dr. Moreno is the recipient of the 2022 Time Top 10 Innovative Teacher Award and the World Affairs Council Houston Global Leaders of Influence. She is also a published author, speaker, national panelist, and most importantly, mother of two. Dr. Marie Moreno, who are you?
Oh, thank you again, Dr. Martinez, for allowing me to be on your podcast. But to answer your question, let me tell you, I mean, you summed it up in that bio. But then, I think what I want people to know about me is I am a very humbled person. I feel I have very a special gift, I guess you can say, of really helping and understanding others. I'm a servant leader. I think even as a principal, I served as a servant leader. I remember, doing the things and helping my families, my parents, even my teachers, because teachers also need support and help because we all need it. So I think, I feel like I am an innovator. I'm a servant leader. I am a person who wants to always put others first before me. And I think that's important, especially when you're working with children and you're working with people who have endured lots and lots of, challenges and they had resilience to come here. And it's a very different time now. We've had I've been a principal, like you said, for 30 years, well, an educator for 30 years, 20 of them as a principal. And I can tell you, I've seen and done so many and heard so many stories that, I feel like I guess, very, very knowledgeable of what is out there. I know people come and tell me all the time, have you ever seen or heard of this? And it's like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I know exactly what you're talking about. So, I just love what I do. And I'm just so blessed to be here this morning.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Marie. So, can you tell us your origin story? Tell us about that trajectory of your life.
Where do we begin, Dr. Martinez? Because let me tell you, believe it or not, you talk about my bio, and I can tell you that my path was never to be an educator. Can you believe that?
Mm.
I I mean, most people assume that I started my career as an educator, that I wanted to, be a teacher. And believe it or not, I was not one of those who had dolls and, played with them and pretend I was this awesome teacher. I was a carrito kind of thing. I kind of would play with the little cars and, I was kind of very boyish, I guess you can say. But yeah, so I graduated with a technology degree. My bachelor's degree is in technology. I started doing computer programming at a oil and gas company.
Oh.
And I don't know if you can believe this. can tell you, but I'm an extrovert, right? I like to talk. I like to be in front of people. I like to be able to, tell you my emotions and my feelings. And I'm a hugger and I'm that type of person. So I remember my boss used to say, I was back in my cubicle kind of typing away. And when they would come and visitors would come and visit us who I would write programs for, they would say, Miss Moreno, go back to your cubicle. You need to go back and work. And I was like, I will talk to you later and I will go back. Oh, I hated it. But my sister had like issues with my niece, right? She was skipping school and she was, it's the regular, teenage syndromes that, our normal teenagers deal with. I told my sister, you know what, give her to me. Give her to me and I will take care of her. I live in Houston, Texas. We're not in a small town here and we got it. So I learned the hard way that I didn't have kids at the time. Raising a child is hard. So the assistant principal would call me all the time and tell me, hey, can you come? She's doing this. She's skipping school. I was always there. And the assistant principal said to me, what do you do? And I said, I'm a computer programmer. He goes, come here, ma'am. Come with me right now. So we walk over to this classroom and he says, sit here. I'll be right back. So I'm sitting there and guess what? Kids started walking. The bell rings and kids start walking in. And I'm thinking, what is this? Why am I stuck in this classroom? It was the weirdest thing, I swear. And I'm in there for about maybe 30 minutes. The teacher walks in and starts kind of blah, 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 blah. Long story short, the assistant principal calls me back out and he says, I'm the assistant principal over career and technology education here. And I said, okay. He says, can you tell me what's wrong with that classroom? And I said, oh, now I'm doing your evaluation. This is lovely. And so he says to me, I said, you know what? This is what I would do. I would throw the books away and just start over. And he says, why? And I said, computer programming is a language. It's a computer language. And if you don't know how to teach language to kids, then it doesn't matter how you teach it because the kids aren't going to understand it. And he said, well, give me an example. So I basically said, if you can just blindfold the kids and have, write down steps to get from here to the main office and write it down, line by line, blindfold the kids and say those commands so that the kids see how important each line is. If you say open the door and you didn't pick up your hand to turn the knob, the computer is not going to know how to do that. So he says, oh my God, that sounds like, something kids would love. He goes, do you want to teach? And I was like, no, I can barely handle my niece, and then you want me to handle a whole school. No, that ain't going to happen. Well, you know what? When you tell me a challenge or something, I'm going to try it. Right. I went back to the University of Houston. I asked them, how do I get a teaching certificate? They told me I needed 6 hours. I went on Saturdays, got my 6 hours, took a leave of absence, jumped in as a computer programming teacher and loved it. And the kids would jump up and down. And I never went back. I never went back to my computer programming job. And then shortly after that, I went to get my master's degree in administration. A bunch of teachers got together and said, hey, let's go get our master's together. And, when you encourage me and motivate me, I'm like, I know, let's go. We can go. So we went and got my master's degree. And then like literally 3 years later, I was only a classroom teacher for 3 years. And because I'm bilingual and I speak Spanish fluently, I read it, I write it, I speak it, I understand it. I became an assistant principal over newly arrived immigrants and refugees there at the high school I worked at. We had 72 countries represented, speaking 42 different languages. So I was like in shocked, right? Because I graduated from Edinburgh, Texas in South Texas, right there close to the border, right? Not too far away from the border, about 8 miles away. And back in the day, back in the 90s, we only had Hispanic students. So seeing students from around the world, even when I went to college, I was like, what is this? Just fell in love with diversity, with with culture, with language, with different kinds of foods. I mean, it was just amazing for me just to kind of see. So like the world is so small, right? If you see it, it's small if you don't really go out there and, find all of these rich traditions that are out there. So I became an assistant principal, and then was there for 10 years, well, about 7 years as an assistant principal. And then I founded Las Americas Newcomer School there in the Houston Independent School District, where it was funny because I when you're the principal, it's like you're sitting. I mean, you sit in the chair and you make the decisions. I wanted to be the best newcomer school out there. Like I wanted people to see what I'm doing and really kind of showcase what we're doing and highlight my teachers and my students and looking at all the great things that they were doing. I started reading lots of books and understanding what does it take to teach students who don't read the same direction as you do, have the same letters that you do. How do you teach them language? Spanish is easy. I speak it, I can understand it. There's like cognates. But when you're talking about Arabic, Oromo, Urdu, Swahili, Tecreña, when you're talking about various languages like that, there's different rules that you have to understand. Traveled the country, learned best practices. I went to Fairfax, Virginia, St. Paul, Minnesota, and Brooklyn, New York. That's where my research was taking me to. Picked up all those, took a team of teachers with me to those 3 different locations. And we said, we're going to start something fresh, something new, something innovative, something that no one has ever seen before. And we created Las Americas. And so I was there for almost 20 years, working with students from 32 countries, speaking 29 different languages. I wanted to still be the best because I felt like I still was not the best. So I started visiting countries around the world so that I can bring back some of those, help my teachers build those bridges, support them in a way that they can accelerate building those relationships with our kids. When you tell people, for example, in Honduras, "Te comes baleadas?" Oh, you eat baleadas. That's good. When kids hear that the kind of food that they eat, they're like, how do you know about that? Or how do you? So kids are very inquisitive, right? They want to know, like, how do you know about their country? How do you know about their traditions? Sometimes you can pick that up off the internet. Sometimes, like me, I like to go and learn and experience and then bring those stories back, bring those experiences back, because not everybody has a chance to travel and visit these places. So my way of supporting teachers and students and parents and everyone in the community is telling stories, providing food, and just really discussing and talking about, other countries so that they know how to build those bridges with their kids and their families. But yeah, I don't even remember the story, the question anymore, sir.
I think that's a great beginning. Understanding that you went to school in an area with a lot of newcomers. Perhaps that's where you got this interest in supporting, and you got into the technology realm, but the school realm brought you back. So I am wondering, what lessons did you learn, and what advice do you have for those people who want to found their own school?
You know, I think it's important for you to do research, right? Look at what the need is. I remember I had a phenomenal superintendent who would say, you have to be the best at something, you know? And all the principals were required to take a Rice University there in Houston, Rice University marketing class. And so here we are, all these principals are in this master's level class, right? About marketing your school. And we all do that. You're a principal, you market your school. I was an assistant principal at the time. And so here I am kind of learning about marketing. But I never realized, you can't be the best in everything. you can't be the best in special education in career and technology. And we have to have our specialty. And so I took that course and I said to myself, what am I going to provide for my community so that people know if you want to be the best in, you go to that school. Yes, they have great athletics, they have great fine arts program. Yeah, they have great, X, whatever that X is. But if you want to learn how to speak English and you want to accelerate your child's English, go to Las Americas because Las Americas has it going on. So it's important. Think about McDonald's, right? McDonald's has the best French fries, by far, most people say, right? They may not have the best burgers, but French fries are the bomb, and they are consistent across, different chains, right? You want the best burger, right, or the best chicken sandwich, you're gonna go to Chick-fil-A. So people are tending are looking for that best in something. You can't be the best in everything. So my advice to people who want to open up their school or open up a school is be the best in something. Everything else can be great, which is nothing less than, the best, but you have to be the best in something so that people know where to find the best X. So that would be my, and that was one of the things that I did, right? I went around and I wanted to see how can I serve students in acquiring language in an accelerated way with multiple languages. And that's difficult because you're looking at not only just, Spanish or, Vietnamese or, Arabic, which are, very popular languages, at least here in this area. But when you have Tecreña, Oromo, I only had one student who spoke Oromo. Do you know how hard is it to find a dictionary that's Oromo English? It took me forever. And so once I found it, I mean, the child had already left, obviously, because, they all grow up one day. But once I found it, I kept it. So I said, now for the next child, I will have my Oromo English dictionary. So little things like that you just kind of pick up and put it in your little toolbox and you never know when you're going to need it, but you have it already there, right?
I love that. So be the best at something and make sure you do your research to keep expanding that talent or that X that you are forming. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Marie. One of the things I admire the most about your career is all this traveling that you do as part of your work. Can you share some of that experiences?
My goodness. I don't think we have all the time in the world, but let me tell you, I'm going to tell you about some highlights. Okay. I've actually been to now 13 countries because I just got back from Honduras. I went to San Pedro Sula 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago now, just to learn a little bit about gang life. A lot of our students tend to flee their home countries because of gang violence to wind up here in America doing the same kind of thing or doing those kind of behaviors. So I wanted to learn a little bit about gang life. So this Honduras trip was not necessarily going into the schools like I normally do. I wanted to go and learn a little bit about gang life. So, I was able to go in with my social worker. Sarah Howell was my social worker about maybe 15 years ago. There at Las Americas when I hired her. So now she's my partner in crime, and we traveled together. We've been to Honduras together just 3 weeks ago, and she also invited me to Cuba, which is another story I'm going to tell you about. But finishing up my Honduras trip, it was very interesting just to kind of learn a little bit about the dynamics and what's going on, and understanding kind of the nuances of what people do and why people do those things there, and then the reasons why they want to try and do that here. So I'm learning a little bit about that. We're also seeing a lot of issues there in schools right now, especially in the Houston area, around friction between certain gangs, right? And so I want to learn a little bit about that. Um, I'm trying to be brave enough, and this is not the year to do it, because I got to be safe. But one of my trips is to go to Afghanistan. I want to learn a little bit about Afghan life. I want to learn a little bit about their traditions. It's really hard to really understand what an Afghani's gone through, or what they're going through. They're really trauma is when people go through trauma and fear, like they have, it's very hard for them to open up and share their experiences. And sometimes you need to know those experiences, and that background to better support the student or provide them the resources that they need. So, my former social worker, I'm going to call her my friend, social worker Sarah Howell, and I are thinking about going to Afghanistan next year. So that's to come. So that'll be another podcast, sir. Okay. But I've gone to Uganda. I went to the refugee camps to do when I was working on my residency for my doctoral studies. I studied. My research is students who entered a newcomer school in middle school compared to students who went to a regular comprehensive kind of throw mainstream students. What happens to students who went through a sheltered, very safe environment like a newcomer campus compared to someone who's been thrown in a middle school? What happens to them when they reunite in high school? How did they fare out, as far as academic achievement, attendance, grades, um, Pell Pass, as far as language acquisition? And so that's my research. And so when they asked me to do my residency, they said, "Well, go visit a newcomer school." And I said, "Well, I kind of feel like I have one of the best ones, so that really wouldn't fare out. What I want to do is kind of get to the root. Where do refugees come from? How do they get selected to even come to the United States? Because this is not the only country they go to. They go to Germany, they go to Australia, they go to Canada. So who gets selected? How do they get selected? How are they vetted? What's the process? And then what is it like to flee another country? Right? I mean, where is the the feelings around that, right? And the culture shock and all of the fear and whatnot. So I went to Uganda. It's the safest place to visit as far as refugees are concerned. I would say it's the refugee capital of the world because they have more refugee camps there in Uganda than probably any other country. As a matter of fact, the Uganda probably takes care of their refugees better than their own people, if you ask me.
Wow.
So I was there for about 18 days, 19 days in a refugee camp in Hoima, Uganda, which is right near the border of Congo. So people just would cross the lake there, and they would end up in either Kenya or Uganda, depending on what side of the lake that you kind of cross. And so that was such an experience. This just, and you would see I had a Ugandan soldier kind of accompany me in the camps, and it was funny because most people, I would draw a crowd. Like people would come around me, and because I would dance and hug and high five people. And so if you see my Instagram, there's a lot of videos of my Uganda trip on my Instagram account. So, anyways, the Ugandan soldier would say, "Ma'am, you need to, not make too much. There's a lot of people on this camp. I mean, there was like, I think there's like 200 or 2,000, something like that, people there." So they're like, you have to calm down because you're just attracting a lot of people. And I asked him why. He says, "Ma'am, you do understand that you're on a refugee camp, right?" And I said, "Yes, I absolutely understand that." He goes, "Most visitors," I'm called Muzungu because Muzungu is white person in Swahili. He would say most Muzungus don't come to refugee camps and interact the way you do. He goes, "Remember, there's a lot of disease. There's a lot of, unknown viruses that are here. I mean, and so you're just kind of like like, you're not scared of any of that. And I said to him, I never even think about those things because I'm just so humbled and so, with the people, and they just love the interaction. They want to be loved. They want to be heard. They want to be, interactive. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was dancing and the kids were dancing and I had little toys for them. And so, anyways, that's my Uganda trip. I learned a lot at the UNHCR. I went to go visit a little bit about, their medical examiner and how he examines everybody before they leave to different countries. I learned about the education system. So I learned about how they acculturate people, teaching them about ice if they're going to a country where there's ice, because in Uganda there is no ice. What is a stove? What's a refrigerator? What's electricity? So they kind of help acculturate them a little bit. My Cuban trip was super interesting because, oh my God, I was working with a school district and they said to me, we have 280 new Cubanos, new Cubans coming since January. I was in this school in April. So how in the world you have 280, children enrolled within a 4-month span? And so they're asking me, Dr. Moreno, why are we getting so many Cubans? And I said to them, I said, I have no idea. But, because I'm a principal and we cannot stay with, I don't know. I have to go and search for an answer or talk to people who are smarter than me, who can tell me, why, answer this $1 million question. So of course, Cuba, you can't like Google anything because you're not going to get anything. So my friend Sarah Howell and I went to Cuba and we searched for the answers. I feel like we're researchers and like on the ground. And, for the first 7 days, we learned everything that the government wanted us to learn about, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have lots of food. They have great education. I know Cubanos are really smart. Their education system is amazing. And I know because I had a lot of Cubans in my school. I didn't know that you can get a doctorate in Cuba for free as well. I didn't know that. I thought it was only high school. No, it's master's and doctorate. You can, get it all. But of course, I spoke to cardiologists, I spoke to neurologists, I spoke to cancer research doctors, and they only get $50 a month. That's their salary because the government says, I give you a degree, you will work for me and you're only getting $50. So that's kind of what I learned, right? Was the government's way of telling the Americans what's going on over there. In reality, um, we ended up staying a little longer than we should have. And that's probably something I shouldn't say publicly, but I am. I'm in America now. I can say it right. Um, and that's when I learned that, I couldn't stay in a hotel anymore. I had to stay out in it. I went to an Airbnb and I stayed in an Airbnb. And that's when the reality hit. That's when the people of Cuba were saying, we have no food. We have no milk. We have no, juice. We don't have any food. We don't have any coffee. So I learned the hard way. So for 4 days, it was really, I was a Cubana, right? I was what they call a Yuma. A Yuma is a American who's there visiting, obviously the country, but I was actually in the non-touristy place. So I was able to see, how much like their food is being rationed. And that's when I learned that the country, just like we have the Black Lives Matter, we have the Me Too movement, we have all of that that's going on here in America, that's happening in Cuba, believe it or not. And the government is like, you know what? Yeah, we're done. So they're actually sending them via airplane to Nicaragua. And all it takes is $2,000. And so many people are selling their homes, their cars, their whatever they need to get off the island, go to Nicaragua. And then from there, they go up the track. So some of them are going to Venezuela. But that's another story for itself. But others are making the track up through Mexico and then up to the Mexico Texas border, and they come into our schools. And so that's one of the reasons why we have a lot of Cubans coming here, is because the government is allowing them to leave because, they have the means of no passport, no nothing needed. Just get on a plane and, adios, bye. And
Wow.
that's my Cuban trip. But it's so every country, like I said, I'm actually going next in 2 weeks. I'm going to, it's not a new country, so I'm not too excited, but I'm going to Puerto Vallarta to go support a school who's in need. They're very, very, they sent me a needs analysis. And so I'm going to go help them. And then my last trip is Tanzania. So I will wait, if you want me to wait on my Tanzania trip, because I am taking educators with me to Tanzania in February. And it won't be the only time. I will be continuing to take educators with me to Tanzania. It's super safe. I've been there now once. I will be going again in February. And I became a board member. The name of the school is Promise Village Academy. It's about 2.5 hours south of Arusha. There is, I mean, you can be teaching and see a giraffe just walk right by
Wow.
you. So we're out in a remote area working with Maasai children. And so, yeah, I just love traveling and I love teaching, and I've somehow combined them,
Wow.
and doing these things overseas. And now I want to take others to put themselves in my shoes and see how is life like teaching students how to speak English in another country.
Wow. I mean, I'm so impressed. It's like that self-actualization stage, at least in your profession, where you get to see and do that kind of labor of love that is intensive, yet I'm sure is very intellectually satisfying. So thank you so much for sharing that, Marie. Let me ask you, like in Back to the Future, if you could go back in time to talk to Marie at any point in your life, what would Marie of today say to the Marie of back then?
Dr. Martinez, I wish you would have told me that earlier in my career, because man, do I have some things to tell Dr. Marie from back in the day. But one or two things I would definitely say, and I would, put out there for all of the people out in the audience to listen, is journal. I can't tell you how important is it to journal. Capture those moments, capture those ideas, capture those stories of people that you've encountered. I found myself doing some journaling. I wasn't consistent. I was cleaning out my closet not too long ago, and I found one year I had I guess a mentor who told me, "Hey, Marie, you need to start journaling. It's important for you to kind of, so that you know what you're doing the next day." So it was more kind of to make sure that I was doing what I needed to be doing. I was a younger principal at the time. So there's a couple of notes in there. But I'm talking about not to-dos, not, oh, I need to do this tomorrow, or journaling. I'm talking about journaling of, I met a family who crossed the Darien Gap, who, almost, fell off a cliff, something, talk about the stories, the journals, the experiences our families go through, the lives that you are working with, that you're touching, that you're shaping, that you're molding. Because here I am today, and I have students that say to me, Dr. Moreno, oh my God, I miss you so much. I was your student back in, 2007. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I was a second year principal. And she said, do you remember when you, and so she's telling me this story, and I vaguely remember it because it's so long ago. And can you imagine everything that's happened since then?
For sure. For sure.
But had I captured, because it was a compelling story of what she's under, what she went through getting here. I mean, to the point where I remember telling, when she was telling me the story, I was like, oh, I remember this story, where mom put sister on one car, not a little truck, right?
Mhm,
Puts the
mhm.
brother on another one because they didn't fit in the same. So mom ends up going with the little girl, and the boy says, okay, they didn't fit, so go on the other truck, and I'll see you, further up. Well, the truck falls into a ravine, and no one survives, right? So when the mom and the little girl make it to the United States, she's asking, where's her little boy? Where's her son? And they had to tell, they tell her, I'm so sorry, that truck, you know, didn't make it. There was a wreck. Or I remember mom telling me, I haven't told the sister. I haven't told her sister that her little brother didn't make it. So I remember having to tell her, now this little girl who is now, a young adult. Um, I remember when I was telling her when she was small, how, because mom didn't know how to explain it to her or tell her that, this journey was dangerous. So when she was telling me this, when now she's older and she's saying, "Oh my God, do you remember when you told me that story?" She was, I miss my brother so much, but I remember when you gave me a little rabbit, and I had stuffed animals in my office all the time, and I always use them for different occasions, whether it's a talking piece, whether it's a calm down, whether it's, so this was more like soothing. It had like long hair, and so I kind of remember giving it to her, and I remember her stroking it, right, when I was telling her. And so she said to me, she goes, I'm so happy that you gave me that. She goes, because it made me feel better. But this is now an adult telling me this, right? And how she felt when she was this little girl. And it made me feel so no one taught me how to do this. It's just the mother nature, I guess, in me, or the humbleness that I have. And so I wish I would have kind of kept those types of experiences in a journal so that I can go back and think about all of those people that I touched. I may not see them today, but I'm sure I touched many, many, many of them. And I hope they remember. I hope they remember who I am, because I know a lot of them. They still, social media is amazing. How you get connected with people, and so I'm just so, humbled and so excited to see some of my now adult students having their own kids and raising them, and then they call me saying I need help. So that's kind of the nice part. And
That's
the
beautiful.
second thing really quickly is be true to your family. I think that's one of the things. I was so indebted into the principal chair. I was so happy that I was a school principal. I think that was, it's my favorite role. I mean, I was also a coach at one point. So, but principalship is when, but I have two boys, as you mentioned, and I tell you that now that they're older, I try and spend more time with them. I'm getting older, but I kind of feel like I missed a lot of those, you know, true, milestones of my kids because I was glued to the chair. I wanted to make sure that I took care. I remember my kids telling me, "Mom, can you buy me this?" And I was like, "Yeah, go ahead." She goes, "But you already have a whole bunch in the shopping cart." And I said, "No, I know those are for my kids at school." Well, can I get one for me? And I go, put another one in there, because it was always kind of laser focused on my children at school, my 5, 6, 7, 800, students at school, that I really, really, my kids were always second. And I would, if I had to talk to my younger Marie back in the day, back in time, I would say, take care of your kids. You have to, your own personal kids are also just as important as your kids at school.
Thank you so much for sharing, Mary. I think journaling is such a great advice. I personally, uh, I know it's a good thing. Um, but I don't know. My brain is like, no, you did that workout already in your mind. Why are you gonna do it again? It is a challenge for me. But I love that you gave that advice, and also about the what you give up as a principal. I'm glad that you bring it up because it's always such a challenge because like when people say the principalship is the most misunderstood profession, is because, you know, I think, right? Intellectually, like your mind is draining because you have to accommodate to each person, is a parent, a student, a faculty member, a staff, a vendor, and everybody has different ways of doing things. And in a public school setting or a school setting, you cannot just say you're fired, right? There's, you have to work with everybody and you have to accommodate, and sometimes you have to bite your tongue like, "Arr!" But you can't, and you have to be positive, and it's exhausting. And no wonder many principals struggle with with the time that they dedicate to their family because they are beat. It's the equivalent of running um, a marathon every day in your
Yes.
brain. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. No, I believe it. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of people who aspire to be principals, right? And I always tell them, be ready. Don't come back and complain that there's just so much work to do, that there's so much of this because you signed up for it, right? You signed up and you applied for that position. Know that that position comes with responsibility, comes with accountability, and counts and also accounts for having to give up some things in your life, right, to accommodate all of these other things that you have to take care of. So I know principals that are late to show up to school, right? So I've seen it, and they're the first ones to leave. And it's like, that's not the way it works. School leaders, you're the first one to show up. I remember getting to school at 5:30 in the morning. Our school did not start till 8 a.m. And I was there at 5:30. I had to hire a nanny, to take care of my kids so my kids can go to school on time and everything, because I had to be at school at 5:30. And then I would get home sometimes, not all, at 8:30 p.m. because there was so many things to do. So, I mean, I just tell people, even if it means taking one day to say, you know what, today is family day, so that I can make sure that I take my kids to, a movie, or take them to, a ice skating ring, or whatever you do. But it's important to kind of connect with your family as well, because so many times, so we neglect, and we don't unplug ourselves. I mean, you're right. Not only are we taking care of the kids, we're taking care of the adults, everything from custodians all the way up the chain to, your teachers and your assistant principals. And then you have to work with the community, because I don't believe in just working with the kids. You got to work with the families that belong to these kids, because if you don't take care of the families, these kids are thinking, do I have a home? Do I have food? I'm sick. Who's going to take care of me? And if you don't take care of that, then those kids are going to suffer too, and it's going to hurt your community, your kids, your school. So it's just a lot. It is a lot.
Amen.
So yeah, I that's what I would tell my Back to the Future person, because I think I wish someone would have told me those two things. If someone would have told those two things, I think I would be in a much better place today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your reflection. Let's talk about books. As you know, to get to accomplish anything, reading is so important. And now with electronic reading, audiobooks, it's become more accessible than ever. If you will have to gift two books to a loved one fiction and one nonfiction, which books will those be and why?
So, I my nonfiction book that is my go-to is the book on Ruby Payne, the understanding of poverty. It's a framework of understanding poverty. I It was important for when I remember getting this book from my principal. I remember I said to myself, what can you not tell me about poverty, right? So when I was reading through the book, I remember, and I was, early on in my career, people don't really understand kind of the effects of poverty, and now that I'm a little older, I understand, the book talks a little bit about, like the hidden rules of poverty. everything from food. You know, when you're going through poverty, you're looking at, you know, do I have enough food? Do I, you know, I'm thinking about my trip to Cuba, you know. Whereas people who are more, you know, affluent and more, they're looking at presentation, they're looking at taste, they're looking at the little things that, because they have enough food, right? um about education, right? People with poverty, they aspire, they want it, they understand the importance, but sometimes they feel like it's not really possible. You know, I'm thinking about, you know, some of the other countries that I've been to that education is scarce, where in America, or people that have more, you know, that don't have, didn't really experience poverty, you know, they're looking at, you know, degrees and where they want to become and what do they want to do, looking at clothing, looking at food, looking at education, looking at possessions. You know, people who experience poverty, their possessions really are, you know, friendship, their people, right? You know, the people that they surround themselves. When I was in Tanzania, I can't tell you, people would say, I need money, give me money, right? The Ugandan soldier said, and he actually said, you know, I'm very glad that you didn't pull out some money, because look at all the people that you're going to have to give money to then, right? So my question, my thing to this person, right? I said to her, I said, oh, I want you to continue to believe in God, and I want you to, you know, empower, you know, look at your family and embrace them and love them, and because that's for them their wealth, right? As opposed to people with money, right? They're looking at more objects, more, you know, their purses and, you know, things that they can kind of possess. So it's different as far as um, poverty for different types of classes, and it's important for us to recognize that. And so I always like to take that book and help people, remind people, what does that mean? Because we work with different socioeconomic classes in our schools as well, and we need to somehow validate and help them support and make them understand, you know, once you have establish yourself, once you acculturate yourself in this country, right? How then do you move from these different social classes so that you become then a person of, you know, of having, right? It's the have and have nots, if you will. But you have to understand what people value at the poverty stage to help them understand then what it is to then acquire and have. So that's my go-to as far as my nonfiction. As far as my fiction book, and you're gonna laugh at this one, but as far I love Dr. Seuss books. They are they all have this hidden message. I love to give I used to read Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss to my seniors, because you know the world is small. You know, it's how you you know maneuver and how you kind of walk through walk through this earth, if you will. So I love all those kind of. There's another one. It's Differ Doofer Day is another one. It talks about this test that they need that's passed, and so I used to always do that right before the STAR test, which is a state test here in Texas. But those books all, you know, people say, well, they're like very childish books, and they are, but they say it in a way that kids can then become a kid again. Even adults need to be kids sometimes. And
Yes.
so reading those Dr. Seuss books, to me, I don't care how old you are, you always can pick up a Dr. Seuss book and learn a message of what the whole baseline or what the whole message is about in that particular book.
Wow. I can imagine when you start reading the places where you will go to your students, that you were going to go to so many places yourself. That's amazing.
Oh,
There's a
I
lot of
didn't know
hidden
either. I
wisdom.
didn't.
It's you, like Steve Jobs says that life makes sense only when you look back and connect the dots. You know, and that's a big dot. That book. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
Marie. I feel I'm getting to know you much better. Let's take a quick pause to celebrate the Teach Better community.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
Okay, so let me ask you, who is or who are your biggest influences?
Oh my God, that one's a big one for me because, I got to go back in time. Do you remember the story I told you when I started? That man who put me in that environment, and I'm like, what is he thinking and what is he doing that? By the way, his birthday was yesterday, so happy birthday, Mr. Castañeda. Jaime Castañeda, he was the assistant principal over career and technology. I'd say, I want to kind of do a shout out for him because of him, I'm where I am. And I would not be an educator if he throw me into this classroom and say, fix this for me. So I'm glad I was able to do that for him. He just replaced the teacher and put me there. So thank you, sir, for, doing that. I want to say, some of my biggest influencers, and he's still out there doing great work, is a gentleman by the name of Steve Amsteds. He is currently helping future principals at Rice University. And so he was my very, very first principal who took me under his wing. And I feel I am who I am today because of the work that he did. I absolutely admire this man, and I see him still out there doing great work out there. And so, I want to give him a shout out because, again, I am who I am because of him. I did not know anything about becoming a principal. And when I was his assistant principal, I know when I finally left, and I think we both cried because I was afraid to go away and be a leader of my own. And he was afraid of, I guess, me leaving because, it was a big old hole. I would stay sometimes working till 2-3 o'clock in the morning because we had this deadline and I wanted to make sure things were done. And so 3 o'clock in the morning, like, who does that? That would be me. Now that I am an educational consultant, one of my biggest influence also is Dr. Edith Trevino. When I started my company, she reached out to me. Actually, we reached out to each other. And, she took me under her wing as well and kind of gave me the ins and outs. I feel like I knew about second language learning. I knew about newcomers. I established a whole school. And not only was it just any school, it was a research-based, very well-known. I had hundreds and hundreds of school districts come and visit me, including the United Nations who came to see me, including the Chinese Education Ministry came to see me because they were getting lots of Pakistanis in China and wanted to know how did I do the work that I did at Las Americas. So and Rice University just did a study. It was released. So if you go to the Rice University Kinder Institute, they just released work on my tenure there at Las Americas for the, I think it was like 10 years or 15 years of research because I was there for 18 years. So they were intrigued, the fact that, same system, same, routine, same everything for such a long period of time. Principals don't stay that long usually. And so they did research. So that research just came out January 2024. So 10 months ago. Yeah. So it's brand new, good research that's out there and showed some positive stuff. So I felt like I knew the content. I knew the work that I'm doing. I can support. What I didn't know is more of the business side. I didn't know how to even go about, opening up, creating a business. And so shout out to my friend, Edith Trevino, Dr. Trevino, who has really supported. She's 2 years ahead of me in opening her business. And so she's really taken me under her wing. I'm actually right now in South Texas, where she is. And so I just saw her a couple of days ago because we do a lot of work together. So shout out to her. I also met a gentleman by the name of Mr. Josh Stowat, who's also a principal of a newcomer school in Garland ISD. So shout out to him, just because, again, I mean, he showed me about how the power of social media, as far as putting positive things out there and how you can just turn around a school by really, putting those little small efforts in thank you cards, birthday cards, welcome cards, because people love to still get personalized cards in the mail, the snail mail, because it's special, right? And then the last person that I always wanted to be National Principal of the Year, and it never happened. I was Time.com and I was, World Affairs Council, but never National Principal of the Year. I think I was runner-up Principal of the Year in Houston ISD back in 2014, but I was runner-up, walk, 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 number two. But I met a gentleman on one of a podcast, and David Arencibia. And so now he, reaches out to me, and I follow him and his work and what he's doing, because it's always great to still surround yourself with people who you aspire, who you can see what they're doing, and then taking some of those little nuggets that they're dropping and then saying, man, how can I make it me? Right? Because I'm always learning. I'm still learning. The minute I say that I'm done is the day that I'm going to go to Costa Rica, lay on the beach and hang out and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm done. Right. But every day, if it's not listening to a podcast, learning something new, visiting somebody, so, I mean, these are some of my biggest influences, but I get influenced by many of the things that people are doing today, right? And how they're changing the world. Because guess what? AI is here. It's alive. It's well. It's working. And so we still have to kind of, mold our way to this new world that, you and I can't see just yet.
Amen. Very well said. Thank you so much, Marie. Wow, you're full of stories. I love it. Let me ask you, how do you address imposter syndrome?
That's a good one. I had to stop and think about that one for a second. But, I think what's important for us to remember is we have to continue to remind ourselves who we are. And the minute that you doubt yourself and saying, you know what, I don't think I am as smart or know, anything about something, that you go back and you validate. I told you about, my work with new arrivals. The fact that I still go to some of these countries, validates the work that I do. It validates that what I'm saying and what I'm doing in my line of work, it applies in other countries, and it's also supporting the work that I do here. So when I'm learning these different things in different countries, when I come back and I apply it, I feel like I understand it. The minute that you doubt that, the minute that you feel like, you know what, I don't feel worthy enough, I want people to turn around and look back. Do you have people that follow you? Right? Do you have people that validate your work, that says, you know what? Oh my God, I've tried this and it actually works. Or I've tried it and I tweaked it and now it works better for me. That helps. But I want people out there to also remember that just because you turn around and you see people that follow you, you also need to be a follower of a leader, right? So we can't be the temple. We can't be always on the top. Once you're on the top, you need to be looking at someone above you who also you can still aspire to be that leader, right? So we're always having someone, seeking someone that you can lead or follow, But you need to also turn around and make sure, are you have people, because I know people that say they're leaders and you turn around and no one's following them. No one, I mean, I think of principals that say, oh my God, I can't get anything done because no one wants to, follow my vision. Well, maybe you have to look yourself in the mirror. You have to see, are you really, you're praising, are you supporting, are you providing that that sense of belonging, that culture in your class, in your school, in your classrooms? Because if you don't, then then that's when you have that imposter syndrome, and then that's when you have to say goodbye. You gotta go, because this is obviously not your profession.
Mhm. Amen. Amen. Very well said. Thank you so much, Marie. So let's talk about productivity. As you know,
Mm-hmm.
to get to be able to accomplish anything, we can have all the ideas and all the intentions, but if we cannot organize our days, it's a disaster. When you think about productivity, what comes to
Tell
mind?
me about it. I am a to-do person. I am a to-do lister, and I carry pads of paper all the time with a to-do list and little boxes, because it just feels good to put a little check mark to say, yeah, I'm done with that. I've completed this. It's a good feeling. And I've had to-do lists forever. The problem sometimes is that to-do list sits on my desk, and here I am running around doing other things, and I go home and I was like, oh, I forgot the list. What's on the list? So I love the fact that one of my influencers that I told you about, Dr. Moreno, told me, she goes, Marie, you need to put your to-do list on your computer, on your phone, right? Because I'm sure you don't forget your phone anywhere. And I was like, it's just one more thing I gotta do. And so she says to me, she goes, oh my God, have you heard of Google Keep? And I go, I've never heard of Google Keep. And so she says, open it up. Let me show you what it is. And so now that is my go-to. I love it because it has everything there, all kind of wrapped up. Anywhere I go, as long as I can log into my Google um, Chrome website,
Yeah.
I have that to-do list, whether it's on my phone, whether it's on this computer, whether it's on my computer at home, it doesn't even matter. So now, and it has little check boxes. That's the neat, part of it, that I can check off from there as well. And it checks it off of out of all the lists, right? Because it's all kind of connected. So I absolutely, I'm a to-do list. I also, I'm trying to write a book. And when I was talking about journaling, now there are these different cool, TikTok is, let me tell you, that is a very, very, you're talking about productivity. Do not open TikTok, because I will be there like for 3 hours. And then just like, what? 3 hours is gone. But I saw this little device on TikTok where you record and it kind of analyzes and everything for you. So, that's going to be my new journaling. I'm just going to talk to that little thing, and it's going to put everything together in bullets and everything and organize it very nice for me. So I now have a new journaling system, but I also want to write a book, and I haven't started on it, but I tell people stories from, some of these experiences with kids that I had and that I can still remember. And, as I get older, I'm going to start forgetting. So I need to start writing those things down. The other things that I like to kind of unplug is I love going to the flea market. Love, love, love going to the flea market. I don't know why. I like rummaging. What was it the other day? So here in South Texas, they have flea markets here 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. So it's not only the weekends, it's every day, todos días. And so there was a big old box full of stuff. And so I sit down in the hot concrete and I start organizing. And the man says, ma'am, are you okay? And I was like, it's just messy. I just want to fix all of it. And he goes, are you going to buy anything? And I said, yes, I want to buy them all. I just need to organize them so I know how many of each. There were flashcards. And since I'm going to Tanzania in February, I try and buy things like this. And so the gentleman says, well, there were two for $1, but because you organized it and made it look really pretty, I'll give it to you for $1. I was like, so I can take them. So I go to the flea market. And then my latest and greatest that I love to do now is visit the refugee camps in Mexico, right here on the southern part of the Texas-Mexico border, in a city called Reynosa, Tamaulipas, Mexico. There is over about 2,500 people living on these camps. I visited 3 different camps, and I just took blankets and jackets and clothing and hoodies for our families, our children who are experiencing cold for the first time. Texas, I know, doesn't get too cold. I mean, we're not looking at negative, degree weather here, but 62 degrees is a little chilly for some of our families who have never experienced any cold weather. I mean, Guatemala, there's wet season and dry season. There's the closer you get to the equator, the less, seasons, you're not going to get your 4 seasons down there. So, I was just down there. So I kind of find myself going down there. I just love listening to the stories. I heard about a family from Venezuela who went through the Darien Gap. And so I didn't really know much about the Darien Gap. Here I am kind of researching. I was like, wow, the most dangerous part of land to cross. And here is a mom that I just finished talking to with her 2 kids that went through that. It's like, who does that? I mean, my heart just kind of broke. It's like, oh, when I crossed yesterday, and this happened yesterday. When I crossed yesterday, I went through customs and whatever. I showed him my passport. I crossed, and here I am in the American side now. There was 5 people who had just crossed the Darien Gap. And I said to them, I said, where are you, ¿a dónde van? Where are you going? And, one of them says they're going to North Carolina. Another one says they're going to Dallas. And so I said, they said, we don't know where to go. Like, we don't even know what to do. Now we're in America, and now what? And so, here I am saying, you need to probably get some help. There is Catholic Charities in McAllen, is a couple of miles away from here. That little bus right there, that little white bus is going to take you there. All you need is $5, and that'll get you there. And they're like, we don't even have the $5. And so here I am pulling, some money so that I can get them on this little bus, and so they can take them to Catholic Charities, and at least Catholic Charities there and will kind of navigate them and help them, do what they need to do. But it's like little things like that, the system, I think, is still a little broken, at least for the people that actually followed the rules, did what they needed to do, seeking asylum the correct way. And then here they are in America, and then they're like dropped. It's like, where is the volunteers who can help them here? So, I mean, I just happened to be there, but, that's my way of unplugging. And I guess it's not really unplugging, it's still working. But to me, it's like, I help that family. And I can't tell you, I mean, they even took a picture with me. They're like, can I take a picture? Thank you so much. You're like my little angel. And to me, it's like, it just warms my heart.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It seems that it's no work for you. It's like a natural action to go and support others. Thank you for sharing. Let me ask you a couple of productivity questions. I'm very curious. What lessons do you learn preparing your doctoral dissertation? And what advice do you have for those who are thinking of going through that process?
It's a lifestyle change. I started my doctoral program before COVID. And so I had to really stop and think, do I really want to complete this? Because it takes a big chunk of your time. I was still sitting in the chair. So we just discussed how overwhelming being a principal could be, right? So you have to kind of look at your lifestyle that you currently have now, and then look at where you carve out time to do your doctoral studies, because there's work involved, there's research involved, and then there is time commitment, right, that you have to invest. So I would definitely say that, if you're a principal or someone who, like, you have an assistant or some kind of secretary, I would say to you, I told my administrative assistant, my secretary, at 5 o'clock, I'm still in the office. I'm still here because I don't leave till about 6:30. So at 5 o'clock, I want you to stop what I'm doing and tell me to open up my book and start studying. Right. So she was very consistent. She would say, Miss Moreno, it's 5 o'clock and you need to, then she would put all the stuff away because you're just so, in your work. So I would say carve out time, whether it's every day at 5 o'clock or whether it's, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever it is. I would just stay consistent with carving out time for those people who want to start a doctoral program. And the second thing also is just know that, your time away from family is going to be a little less, but there is an end to all of this, right? It's not like you're going to be going through a doctoral program for 20 years.
Mhm.
We hope not, right? We hope that if it's a 3-year program, then, for 3 years, you're going to give it all you got and just, have that discussion with your family and say, kids, this is what's going to happen. This is and be very transparent with them and let them know this is, I may not be able to do all of this with you, but, those big things I'm going to do, other things I need to take care of my studies. And then lastly, is really, put your heart and mind to it, because I know friends out there, and they're probably going to listen to this because they follow me on LinkedIn, on social media, because they're still spinning. They're still spinning in a doctoral program. And here it is, year 7, year 8, and so I check in on them. I'll say to them, how are you doing? What have you completed? Did you take this to your chair? Are you discussing, these topics or whatever? Because you have to also be consistent and true to yourself. Chairs and committees and dissertation committees, professors are very busy. They have, whether it's 4, candidates or, 17 candidates, no one's going to take care of you but you. I always tell people that you got to take care of yourself. And so you have to advocate for yourself. And if you don't know what you're doing, then reach out to someone who has gone through the program already and say, help me understand this. Help me navigate through this so that it can end, because there is a deadline. There is a I call it a death date, right? It's the time when you can say, yeah, I can put this to rest, right? I don't have to deal with this dissertation forever. But you make sure you complete it, because I tell people the best dissertation out there is a finished one, right? And so we got to finish it. You got to finish that dissertation so that you can get it done. But yeah, reach out to people, people who have a doctorate already. They've experienced it. And if you're spinning, reach out and get some help, because you can't spin forever. And if you've already started, then finish it, because it's the hardest part for people is actually starting it, right? There's a lot of people who don't even want to jump into it because, they're scared or, they don't think they can do it. But if you're in it already, then finish it. If you don't know about doing something like that, then I tell people, hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So it's not about who's privileged to be. It's all about putting the time, putting the effort, and then putting your mind to it, because it really is about researching something that you love. And if you love it, you're going to put your time into it.
Amen. Such a great advice, Marie. My last productivity question is, I saw that you had one of those coveted spots as a TED Talk speaker. What
Chihuahua.
lessons did you learn in getting yourself from the moment you get accepted to the moment you had to present? Walk us through that process. What lessons did you learn? What advice do you have for those like me who aspire one day to be like Marie Moreno and getting one of those red spots?
Oh my, let me tell you that red spot. I mean, I do talks all the time. I mean, look at me. I'm doing this. I do talks all the time. I can talk to big old audiences. That red dot, let me tell you, it gives you amnesia, because I was all like, as soon as I put my heels on that, it was all like blah 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 blah. I had no idea what I was saying anymore. um, so it's interesting, because that is that is truly a time that I can tell you that was tough. That was tough for me, because it has such a prestigious, you know, elevated kind of like a platform. And so I remember when I spoke to the lady who reached out to me and said, "Hey, your story is so inspiring, and working with different refugees, and we would love for you to do a talk on trauma sensitive schools, and creating an environment to welcome, all of these refugees and whatnot." And so this was me. Yes, of course. Yes, 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 I can do it. But I never realized that TED Talks actually have a formula to them. That's what makes them so amazing. I didn't know. I listen to TED Talks all the time, but I didn't know the work that goes behind it. So when you finally get accepted to being on a TED Talk, there's actually a TED Talk Academy that you go through, and you have to follow the modules. And so I went ahead, and I think there's like 10 modules, or maybe 8 modules, where it takes you through this process. And I love it. It's a fabulous model where you come up with the idea of what you're going to talk about. And so you jot those things down, and it's like maybe 10 words. One of the activities that they have you do, you write the 10 words, and it says, call a friend and say those 10 words to them, and then tell them, what is my topic about? And so here I am writing my 10 words, and I would call my friends, and I was like, I'm going to tell you 10 words. Tell me what I'm going to talk about based on these 10 words. And so if they don't give you the right answers, then you have the wrong 10 words. And I was like, can't you figure it out? Oh my God, So I would get so mad at people. They're like, and the process says, if you don't have, it's a thread. They call it a thread, right? And so here I am going back to the drawing board, where I had to kind of come up with, what are my 10 words, so that as I'm talking, that you're repeating these words throughout literally your 6-minute speech, because you have so much to talk about in this little 6 minutes, that you have to make sure that you kind of bullet everything, but you don't go in this little tangent of, oh, and by the way, I remember when I went to Cuba kind of thing, that stuff doesn't happen. So it's really interesting. On the day of the event, it's dark. The whole room is dark. And I remember the lady said to me, I want you to engage with the audience. And I'm thinking, what? I've never seen a TED Talk where people, at least not what I've seen. So I said, I've never engaged. I don't even know what that means. So I figured, if I pose questions, I can at least see people nod their heads. And to me, I kind of feel like I captured you. So I figured that's the way I'm going to engage, as opposed to asking a question to the audience. Because what will happen then, if you pose a question to the audience, someone's going to respond. And then your minutes are being eaten up in the 6 minute, because someone's going to talk about, something else. So I figured asking a question was not what I wanted to do, but she wanted me to engage in a way that, people were understanding what I was saying. So I would say, close your eyes, and I want you to, think about, a journey to, and then open your eyes. And I want you, and here I am kind of again talking. So I engage with them in a way of having them reflect on their own without having to answer. So that was some of the things that I did for my TED Talk. But it was I would say, don't overthink it is the last thing, right? Is don't overthink it. I remember having note cards And here I am trying to memorize some of the words, some of the phrases. Like, you can't go into that red circle thinking that you can literally restate those flashcards. So here I am with flashcards. The lady who put me there, um, she said to me, she's a professor at Houston Community College. She said to me, she picks up the cards and she throws them away. She goes, "Stop rehearsing. You got this. You're a natural. Just go in there and do it." So I would say that that was some really good advice. Is if you know your stuff, then you're going to go onto that little circle and you're going to share your story as authentic as you want it to be. Keeping that thread in mind so that you're not going on tangents, because at 6 minutes go by really fast. And but it's the most amazing experience. I'm humbled and excited and blessed that I was given the opportunity, because it's certainly a humbling experience.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Marie, my last question for you. When you take out the hat of educator, consultant, mom, and what does Marie does for fun for Marie?
What do I do for fun? I if I can just I don't know, lay on a beach somewhere. Just lay on a beach and get some sun. I don't do that often. I try to, because to me, I tell you, I travel a lot. And when I travel, half the time when I go to different countries, it's not for me for fun. It's always to go and learn something. But to me, that is fun. I enjoy visiting and learning about. Someone asked me the other day, "Hey, do you want to go see the pyramids in Greece?" And I was like, "Are there any children there?" And they're like, "No, can you just go and learn about, history?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess as long as I can then go to Ethiopia afterwards, kind of thing." So, I mean, I guess I can do a little bit of fun in between visiting other countries and whatnot. I told you I was going to Tanzania again in February. And so someone says, "Are you excited that you're going to Tanzania?" And I was like, "I was already there. I was there in February." Now, granted, I'm going to take some educators with me this next time. But I kind of feel like if I'm already on that continent, I better go learn another country. So the guide that is going to show us around or show my new educators, friends, Tanzania, I tell them, once I put everybody on the plane, I said, "Can you take me to Ethiopia? Because I'm already like only 2 hours away. So I just want to just jump there. Or I want to go to Madagascar. It's just east of Tanzania." And I said to my friend, I said, "I want to do my research." And she says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I saw a movie that the elephants and the giraffes, they were all talking to one another. It was called Madagascar. And so I want to go and visit the island and see if I can find them talking to one another." She goes, "You're crazy." But yeah, I love to go to places that no one goes to. If I had a chance to go to North Korea, I would go to North Korea. Places that people, it's challenging to go to places like that. I want to be there. I want to go to I want to go to the Darien Gap. I want to see it for myself. I want to feel it. I may not be able to cross it because I don't think I'm brave enough, or that's just scary. Not everybody makes it. It's a very, very dangerous part of the world. So just to say, wow, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like. I walked, maybe a mile in, and now I'm going to walk back out because I'm going to get back on a plane. But just places where people don't get to experience. To me, that's my fun. Putting myself in danger. I'm just joking.
Beautiful. Thank you,
I'm a
Marie.
daredevil.
uh, You absolutely are. But for the good. Marie, any last thoughts for the viewers and listeners of the show?
What I would say to everybody is, stay true to yourself. You know, Enjoy life. Life is really short. We have to be able to not only take care of our own soul, our own minds, our own heart, but also, take care of those people around you. not everybody has what we have, right? And so sometimes we have to kind of stop and think about, where do we come from, and where did other people come from, and how do we make other people feel better? So, this is a better place when we all support one another, when we encourage one another, and we provide them sometimes a little support when they may not have it. I just think that sometimes we tend to lose that. And if we all help one another as opposed to, tearing each other down, I don't think I'd be where I'm at today if it wasn't for people to kind of lift me and support me and help me. And my job now is to then turn around and help and support and lift others, because I didn't get here by myself. And we need to learn to kind of continue that, because for whatever reason, I don't know, we don't do that as often as we should. And I think it's important for us to remind everybody out there in the audience that we need to support one another, because this world is a better place when we all support each other.
Amen. So well said, Marie. It has been such a pleasure having you in the show.
Thank you. It was great. I can't believe it's been, an hour and a half already.
Yeah,
But it was fun.
flies
Thank
like
you
this.
so much, Dr. Martinez. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
I
Have a
appreciate
great
it.
weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Bye.
listening to Wisdom and Productivity, the podcast of Dr. Efrain Martinez.
Chulo.
And as of that production, chill out.